don't know about you, but I didn't find this a particular beginner-friendly challenge, but maybe that's just because I don't use spatial that much in my day-to-day work. So what we have is the 7 points for our star, and my logic was that we want to draw a line to each of these points from each of these points. But we wouldn't want these ones that are closest, and we also wouldn't want these two that are furthest away to help us build that. So we just want the two in the middle, for example. That was my thinking of how we'd create that star shape. So I joined every point to each other, filtered out those that were equal to each other. I realized that's actually not a necessary step, because what I did was use the find nearest. For each point, I want to know the points that are third and fourth distance away. I had to increase the maximum distance quite a lot here, and then filter out those first 2 points that are nearest, so that when I finally joined them together, it's not going to display it very well in this browse tool in particular because I haven't run it. But if I show you sort of further along the process, you can see what I mean, that my first point now is joined to my third and the second one there, so that it's created those 2 lines. So that's what I was aiming to do. And then you have at least the outline of the shape that you want to create. So I just put on a record ID, deselected some fields, and just for those spatial objects transposed, and then use the poly sequence polybuild tool, to do a sequence polyline, grouping by the value, grouping by the record ID, and the source field is the value, so that I create those lines. So I've got a record per line at the moment here. Okay, that must mean wait, one. I'm not going to count all the lines, but yeah, I've got 14 lines apparently. Yeah. Yes, I do have some duplication of lines, of course, as they go to and from. Anyway, that makes sense. So then I just create this as a combined spatial object, so that I just have now one row that contains all that information about that shape. Okay, so I thought, okay, I've got this shape. How do I get the area filled in within this shape? I thought, okay, I'll use a spatial info tool just to get the bounding rectangle polygon, so that basically puts a square around my star, or a rectangle around my star shape. And okay, so if I use the buffer tool to buffer out my lines a little bit, make them into more polygons, so you can see now that this is a polygon rather than here it was still a polyline. Okay, so now it's 2 polygons there, and I use the spatial process tool to cut out that star shape from the rectangle. Okay, so I'll add in a little browse tool there to show what that's looking like at that point so that you can see what I mean. So I have my rectangle around my star, I have the star within it, and then my spatial process field looks then like this. So it's a rectangle with the star, and it's all filled in. So I just basically now want to get rid of this area, the 4 corners basically, and then I'd have in the middle my star filled in. It's very complicated, this process. It took me, I started this morning, and then I did my work day, and then I realized on the train home how I could maybe resolve it. That's where the bounding rectangle started to come in, and then I continued building it. Okay, so I just keep that spatial process, and then I split this into regions. Sorry, oh, it just gets upset a bit when I keep doing these things. So now these are separate clickable regions, each of those points, and I just want to remove these 4 corners basically. So how do I do that? Well, I come back to where I started with my bounding rectangle, and I split that into points, so that now I have these 4 points at the corners of my rectangle. And I'm going to then put just a record ID on this so that I have a unique way to identify my regions in that star polygon here. So this region here, for example, is now region 1, or probably region 4 actually, as it's on the 4th line. And I did a spatial match, so I wanted to know which of these touched those points. So as you can see, I then want to exclude these. So I did a join and only kept what came through the right. Did a little bit of buffering again, the value being 2. That made it work for some reason. And then when I use my summarize this time to combine, then I get my star shape. Ugh, That feels really good to have got to that stage. I know that other people did it in about 3 tools, and I know that mine might not be 100% because I've had to do the buffering. Maybe it's slightly off by a couple of miles, but I am happy with that solution. And it let me use all the variety of spatial tools again for this challenge. So hopefully at least this was educational about spatial tools. So thanks very much for watching.